This right here is as hard as it gets. This is crazy. Why? The a value is not 1. It's actually a fraction. It's a negative fraction. It's ugly. If you understand this, you'll understand anything. Okay, so please pay attention right now. Stop me if you have any questions. All right, so you want to graph this thing. It says 4 points, but how do you start graphing any parabola? You have to find the most important point, which is the what? The vertex. Everybody should write down the word vertex. And everybody should write down the coordinate right next to the word vertex. And in order for us to write this or find this vertex, we need to use the formula, right? X equals negative b over 2 times a. And when you use it, please replace the b and the a with parentheses. That is how you start this thing. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not going to remember that, you don't have to. It's on the wall. It says right there, right? I mean, that's exactly what I wrote. I wrote the word vertex. I wrote the coordinate with a comma. I did the formula. I wrote the formula, but with parentheses instead of the b and the a. So we did that already, okay? Now, let's actually identify the b and the a. What's the b value, guys? Negative 4. The b value is the number in front of the x, and that is a negative 4. So we're going to plug in this negative 4 value right in there. And the a value is what? Negative 1 over 3. Okay, that's kind of ugly. Let's write it down. Negative 1 over 3. Okay? Now, if you're freaking out, all you got to do is get the scientific calculator and hit the fraction button, and it'll put a division bar, and then type in on the numerator a negative, open parenthesis, negative 4, close parenthesis, then move your cursor down to the bottom, type in 2, open parenthesis, negative 1/3, close parenthesis, and it'll give you your answer, right? If you hit equal, it'll give you your answer. That'll be the x value. Now, I'm going to explain it because I don't have a calculator with me right now. I'm going to explain it the way I would normally do it, understanding math. Up on top, a negative 4, that's a positive 4. Now, on the bottom, if I wanted to multiply a number times a fraction, all I have to do is put that number 2 over 1 so it'll look like a fraction, then multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom, and I'll end up with a negative 2 over 3. So on the bottom, we have a negative 2 over 3. Now, this really says 4 divided by negative 2 over 3. And I could make this more easy to understand if I write it out horizontally instead of vertically. 4 divided by negative 2/3, okay? I hope we remember from semester 1 that when you are dividing by a fraction, you could change the division to multiplication, but all you got to do is flip the second fraction, okay? So the division, we're going to change to multiplication. So you really have 4 times, but instead of negative 2/3, I'm going to flip it and make it a negative 3/2. So I need to multiply 4 times negative 3/2. You could put the 4 over a 1 and multiply the top with the top and the bottom with the bottom. Up on top, we have a 4 times negative 3. That's a negative 12. And on the bottom, we have 1 times 2, which is 2, giving us a final answer of negative 6. Now, if that freaks you out, again, you could type in this exact thing right here into the calculator. Negative, parenthesis, negative 4, close parenthesis. Make sure it's in the fraction mode where you put the fraction bar. Then on the bottom, type that in, hit equal. It'll give you negative 6. So we found that the vertex is negative 6. Are you with me so far? Okay. That's a hard part. Now, we still need the y value. Anytime you have an x and you want a y, all you got to do is take that x value and plug it into where your x's are at. That's pretty logical. We know that x equals negative 6. So let's take that negative 6, put it where the x's are at. Now, the safe way to do this is to rewrite it exactly the way it is, but instead of x's, put parentheses. So when I look at this and I read y equals, I'm going to start writing y equals. And then I read negative 1/3 x squared. I'm going to write down negative 1/3 parenthesis with the square. And then I read negative 4x. I'm going to put negative 4 parenthesis instead of x. And then minus 7, I'm going to put minus 7. Now, why did I put parentheses instead of x's? Because I know that x equals negative 6. So I'm going to plug in that negative 6 right in there, okay? So negative 6 goes right in there, and a negative 6 goes right in there. If you do it this way, it's like almost guaranteed you're not going to make a mistake. Now, let's say you're not confident with your math skills, then go ahead and type this into a calculator. Put the fraction bar, put a negative 1 over 3, open parentheses, type it in exactly the way this looks like, and it'll give you your vertex y value, okay? But if you feel confident with your math skills, then go ahead and do what I'm about to do. Negative 6 squared, that's negative 6 times negative 6, that's positive 36, but you still need to multiply it by the negative 1/3 that's out in the front, and you could do this on the calculator, or 36 divided by 3, that's going to ultimately be a 12 with a negative, so that's going to be a negative 12. And then if you multiply the negative 4 times negative 6, that's a positive 24, and you still have the minus 7 that comes down. So from left to right, you owe 12, you have 24, that's going to be a positive 12. Take away 7, the answer is 5. We just found out the y value equaling 5. So the vertex y value is 5. That's the most important point of this complicated quadratic trinomial equation of the parabola. Let's go to the location, negative 6 on the x, 5 on the y. Remember, x is left and right, y points to the sky. So here we go. Going to the location, negative 6 on the x, positive 5 on the y. There's our vertex. We need more points. Now, this is where it gets crazy. Because normally, if the a value is 1, we could use a pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. I actually made this chart before we started this. It says right here, when your a value is 1, you could go 1 over from the vertex, 1 up. Then you go back to the vertex, 2 over, 4 up. Back to the vertex, 3 over, 9 up. That's pretty easy when the a value is 1. However, the a value is not 1, as you can see. The a value is negative 1/3. So I need to modify the outputs. So I recommend for you guys to write down the pattern on your paper, 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. But next to the 1, the 4, and the 9, put parentheses, because we need to modify the outputs of this pattern when your a value is, in this case, negative 1/3. So it's negative 1/3 that we need to modify it by. So we put a negative 1/3 times that 1, a 4 times negative 1/3, and a 9 times negative 1/3. Okay? So 1 times negative 1/3 is negative 1/3. What does that mean? That means that the original pattern from the vertex was 1 over, 1 up. Now you're going to go 1 over and only a third of the way down, which you can't do on Quizizz. But then you go back to the vertex, and instead of going 2 over, 4 up, it's 2 over and 4 times negative 1/3. If you did that on the calculator, it's going to be a negative 4/3 or a negative 1 and 1/3, which you can't do on Quizizz either. But if you go to the last part of the pattern on your calculator, 9 times negative 1/3, that will give you a negative 3. And you could use that pattern on Quizizz because it's a nice 3 over and 3 down. Are you with me? Okay. Now, check it out. I could still use, like if I were graphing on paper, first of all, I know it's opening down. I'm going to go 1 over and a third of the way down. If I were graphing on paper, 1 over and a third of the way down, that's not even halfway down, it's a third of the way down. If it were on paper, I could actually put a dot right there, a third of the way down. But you can't do that on Quizizz. Like when you try to go 1 over and a third, it's going to jump to this one. It's not going to let you go right there. It's going to jump to that one. So obviously it didn't work. So I'm not going to use this first part of the pattern. I'm not even going to use the second part of the pattern. But the third part, 3 over, 3 down, that works out beautifully. So you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and there it is, right? And of course, there is an invisible axis of symmetry going right through that vertex at the x value of negative 6, which provides a reflection onto the other side. So technically, just with that first part of the pattern, or that part that we used, you could map it over 1, 2, 3 units away, 1, 2, 3 units away, and now we officially have 3 dots to this parabola, okay? It does say plot 4 points, so I need another point. What point is super easy to get on any quadratic trinomial standard form equation? The y-intercept, that's exactly right, the y-intercept. How do you find the y-intercept? You set x equal to 0 and solve. So if you're setting x equal to 0, the coordinate is going to have the x value of 0, and you need to find out what the y value is, and it's the easiest, it's so ridiculously easy. Plugging in 0 where the x's are at, you don't even have to do the math. Everything becomes 0 except for the minus 7. So you actually have 0, minus 7, and that tells you where it's going to cross your y-axis. At 0 on the x, negative 7 on the y, it crosses right there. Now, of course, you should try to map it over to the other side, but if you go, okay, it's 6 units away, 6 units, you're going to be 2 units off the graph. You're not going to be able to plot it. So that's why it only asks for 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, if you were graphing on paper, you would have been able to have gone 1 over and a third of the way down, and you could have mapped that over to the other side, a third of the way down over here. You could have even done this other part of the pattern, the 2 over and negative 4/3, that's negative 1 and 1/3. So 2 over and negative 1 and 1/3 would be right there, 1/3 of the way down. So if you were on paper, yeah, you could put these other dots. Oh, wait a minute, I did something wrong there, didn't I? I mapped that one over wrong. That should have been right here at the 1/3, and then that one right here at the 1/3. I apologize. Anyways, we're not even graphing on paper, we're graphing on Quizizz. So as long as you have those blue dots, you'll be good to go. Let me erase that one. Okay. So if you were on paper, yeah, you could go through that red dot that are not at nice locations, and with arrows on it, and you're good to go. But on Quizizz, all you need is 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll get full credit. That's as hard as it gets. It doesn't get harder than that, okay?